Recording. Yes, we're reading out of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 16. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 It's chapter 7, text 16. Chatur Vida Bhajante Mam Jana Sukritino Arjuna Arto Jigyasur Artarti Gyani Cha Bharatar Sabha Chaturvida Bhajante Mam
Chaturvida Bhajante Mam
Jana Sukriti Norjuna
Jana Sukriti Norjuna
Arto Jigyasur Artarti
Arto Jigyasur Artarti
Gyani Cha Bharatar Sabha
Yanisha Bharatar Shava
Chaturvida Bhajante Mam
Chaturvida Bhajante Mam
Jana Sukriti Norjuna
Jana Sukriti Norjuna
Arto Jigyasur Artarti
Arto Jigyasur Artarti
Gyani Cha Bharatar Shava
Yanisha Bharatar Shava
Chaturvida Bhajante Mam
Chaturvida Bhajante Mam
Jana Sukriti Norjuna
Jana Sukriti Norjuna
Arto Jigyasur Artarti
Arto Jigyasur Artarti
Gyani Cha Bharatar Shava.
Yanisha Bharatar Shava.
Would anybody else like to chant?
Chaturvida Bhajante Mam
Chaturvida Bhajante Mam
Jana Sukriti Norjuna
Jana Sukriti Norjuna
Arto Jigyasur Artarti
Arto Jigyasur Artarti
Yanisha Bharatar Shava
Yanisha Bharatar Sabha
Chaturvida Bhajante Mam
Chaturvida Bhajante Mam
Jana Sukriti Norjuna
Jana Sukriti Norjuna
Arto Jigyasu Vatati
Arto Jigyasur Artarti
Yanisha Bharatar Sabha
Yanisha Bharatar Sabha. Anybody else?
Chaturvida Bhajante Mam
Chaturvida Bhajante Mam
Jana Sukriti Arjuna
Jana Sukriti Norjuna
Arto Jigyasur Artarti
Arto Jigyasur Artarti
Yanisha Bharatar Shava
Yanisha Bharatar Sabha.
Chaturvida Bhajante Mam
Chaturvida Bhajante Mam
Jana Sukriti Arjuna
Jana
Sukriti Norjuna
Arto Jigyasur Artarti
Arto
Jigyasur Artarti
Jana Cha Bharatar Shava
Yanisha Bharatar Sabha.
Chaturvida Bhajante Mam
Chaturvida Bhajante Mam
Jnana Sukritina Arjuna.
Jnana Sukritina Arjuna.
Tato Jigyasurartati.
Arto
Jiga Surartarti.
Yancha Bharatarshava.
Yancha Varatarshava.
Chaturvidha bhajante mam.
Chaturvida Vajante Mam.
Jana sukritino Arjuna.
Jnana Sukritina Arjuna.
Arto jigna surarharti.
Arto Jiga Surartarti.
Gyanicha bharatar sabha.
Yanicha Varatarshava.
Chaturvidha bhajante mam.
Chaturvida Vajante Mam.
Jnana sukritina Arjuna.
Jnana Sukritina Arjuna.
Arto jigna surartharti.
Arto Jiga Surartarti.
Janicha bharatar sabha.
Yanicha Varatarshava. So we'll read the word by word. Chaturvida,
Chaturvida.
4 kinds of.
4 kinds of.
Vajante,
Bhajante.
render services.
Render services.
Man,
Mam.
unto me.
Unto me.
Jana,
Jana.
persons.
Person.
Sukritina,
Sukritina.
those who are pious.
Those who are pious.
Arjuna,
Arjuna.
O Arjuna.
O Arjuna.
Arta,
Arta.
the distressed.
The distressed.
Jigyasu,
Gyasu.
the inquisitive.
The inquisitive.
Arta Arti,
Arta Arti.
one who desires material gain.
One who desire material gain.
Jnani,
Jnani.
one who knows things as they are.
One who knows things as they are.
Cha,
Cha.
also.
Also.
Bharatar Shava,
Bharatar Shava.
O great one amongst the descendants of Bharata.
O great one amongst the descendants of Bharata.
Translation. O best among the Bharatas, Arjuna, 4 kinds of pious men render devotional service unto me. The distressed, the desirer of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the absolute. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Unlike the miscreants, these are adherents of the regulative principles of the scriptures, and they are called Sukritina, or those who obey the rules and regulations of scriptures, the moral and social laws, and are more or less devoted to the Supreme Lord. Out of these, there are 4 classes of men: those who are sometimes distressed, those who are in need of money, those who are sometimes inquisitive, and those who are sometimes searching after knowledge of the absolute truth. These persons come to the Supreme Lord for devotional service under different conditions. These are not pure devotees because they have some aspiration to fulfill in exchange for devotional service. Pure devotional service is without aspiration and without desire for material profit. The Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu defines pure devotion thus: Anya vilasita shunyam jnana karmadi anavritam anukulyena krishnasnu shiranam bhaktir uttamam. One should render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord Krishna favorably and without desire for material profit or gain through fruitive activities or philosophical speculation. That is called pure devotional service. When these 4 kinds of persons come to the Supreme Lord for devotional service and are completely purified by the association of a pure devotee, they also become pure devotees. As far as the miscreants are concerned, for them devotional service is very difficult because their lives are selfish, irregular, and without spiritual goals. But even some of them, by chance, when they come in contact with a pure devotee, also become pure devotees. Those who are always busy with fruitive activities come to the Lord in material distress, and at that time associate with pure devotees and become, in their distress, devotees of the Lord. Those who are simply frustrated also come sometimes to associate with the pure devotees and become inquisitive to know about God. Similarly, when the dry philosophers are frustrated in every field of knowledge, they sometimes want to learn of God, and they come to the Supreme Lord to render devotional service and thus transcend knowledge of the impersonal Brahman and the localized Paramatma, and come to the personal conception of Godhead by the grace of the Supreme Lord or his pure devotee. Jai. On the whole, When the distressed, the inquisitive, the seekers of knowledge, and those who are in need of money are free from all material desires, and when they fully understand that material remuneration has nothing to do with spiritual improvement, they become pure devotees. As long as such a purified stage is not attained, devotees in transcendental service to the Lord are tainted with fruitive activities, and they search after mundane knowledge, etc. So one has to transcend all this before one can come to the stage of pure devotional service. Okay, so I don't know the invocations. We can go along with me as I stumble through them, if we want to read them. Just the first one, great, okay. Oh, okay. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachale Shatarine. Okay, so I'm calling this class for myself. Krishna consciousness is for everyone, and the part that I'm going to focus on is, O best among Bharatas, 4 kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me. And as we mentioned, the distressed, the desire of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the absolute. When 4 kinds of persons come to the Supreme Lord for devotional service and are completely purified by the association of pure devotees, they also become pure devotees. So yeah, just like last time, I give class about where I'm at and what would be helpful for me, and then hopefully that's helpful for somebody else. Hopefully that translates in some way. And so the question that I pose is bhakti yoga only for pure devotees? Because in a lot of places, it can kind of seem that way, but my answer is in capital letters, no. Krishna and Prabhupada encourage everyone to engage in bhakti yoga and devotional service, regardless of what kind of desires they have, if they have material desires, if they have spiritual desires, if they have desire for liberation, which is still material. So regardless of what our goal, what our desire is, Krishna is always the best person to ask. And so I have a compilation of different lectures, different purports to support my point, which is really Prabhupada's point. Yes. So just like we mentioned, 4 kinds of impure devotees will come to the Lord for their different desires. And by the mercy of Krishna, by the mercy of the pure devotee, if by chance they do come in contact with a pure devotee, which they more than likely will come in contact with Prabhupada if they're in search of Krishna, then they have his blessing, they have his mercy, and they can themselves become purified. And so in just a few texts ahead, Prabhupada says these 4 kinds of impure devotees, when they come in contact with a pure devotee, then they can become fully Krishna conscious, and they can actually enjoy spiritual association with the Supreme Lord. And in contrast, those who are worshippers of demigods never reach the Supreme Lord or his supreme planet. And there's a purport in the Srimad Bhagavatam that says that when the demigods are themselves distressed, they'll come in tears to Krishna, in grief and tears, and they become almost pure devotees through their humility. And if they do liberate themselves from material desires and they fully surrender to the Lord, then they actually have an opportunity to become pure devotees. And it requires this kind of full surrender where they'll say, Krishna, I fully surrender, and I leave it totally up to you to either maintain me or annihilate me. And Prabhupada writes that it requires that kind of surrender to really get to the pure platform, the pure devotional service, pure surrender, to fully leave our existence in Krishna's hands, which is what some demigods get to in their own distress. And so these, in my research, I found these 4 kinds of devotees, of impure devotees, are in almost all of the texts in the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Nectar of Devotion, Chaitanya Charitamrita. I found it was like a common theme that Prabhupada talks about. And so in the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada talks that even though these devotees, even though they're impure, they're pious. Without being pious, they wouldn't ever even approach Krishna. So it says Prabhupada says one cannot come to devotional service unless he has executed pious activities. One simply won't come to Krishna without pious activities. If a man is distressed, he becomes agnostic or a communist or something similar, because he doesn't believe in God. He believes that he can adjust his situation on his own. Prabhupada gives the example of like someone that's pious. Yes, if they're in distress or if they're in need of money, Prabhupada puts it in the language that he'll go to church and pray, and he says that's very good. That's a good man, even if that's not pure service. He's saying that's a good man, because somebody else might not go to church and pray. They might either just stay in distress on their own or think that they can keep trying and figuring it out. And so if someone wants money and they ask Krishna for money, that's a good man, because they realize Krishna is the one that gives. Even if they have some material motives or what have you, they're still approaching the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so they're a good man, which is very relieving for me. It's very encouraging for me, because practically like all of my relationship with Krishna is in this way. It's in the mode of I have material desires. Sometimes it's for liberation. Sometimes I'm curious. Oftentimes I'm in distress. I want money. I want knowledge of the absolute, and I always have some kind of like material agenda, which like actually researching for this class was very helpful, because it helped me to see that's like, according to Prabhupada, I'm a good man, because whenever I have any kind of distress, I'll ask Krishna for it. And I tend to like ruminate on the part of like, oh, well, I have material desires, so like that's not pure. And okay, that's true. And it's also so much better. Like if I'm going to be distressed, which I'm accepting that like I am, then it's so much better. Like I'm so grateful that I go to Krishna for relief rather than only go to other things or to not go to Krishna. So yes, I found this, very, very affirming. Prabhupada references, without being pavrita, without being pious, without being free from contamination of material activities, nobody can approach Krishna. So, well, there it gets kind of blurred for me, because okay, I do have contamination of material activities, but it's like he says, that's a fact. Without being free from contamination of material activities, one cannot approach Krishna. And like my sense of what that means, because later on he says that's a fact, but Krishna is so kind that he orders that even if you have some kamanam, some desire, material desire, still you can take shelter upon me. And that's referencing the last verse of the Bhagavad Gita. You do not take shelter of anything else, simply depend on me. And so the way that I interpret both of these to make sense is one cannot approach Krishna without being free of material desires in the very direct personal sense of like directly associating with them in the most like sublime, surrendered way, in the way of the Rasa Lila dance, or in the way of being in Goloka Vrindavan with him. And simultaneously, one can approach him maybe like in the way that I approach him, which is like with all of my material stuff in the way, I'm still endeavoring to approach him. And so that's a way that I can make sense of the seeming contradiction. One can't approach him without material desires, but still, if you have material desires, approach Krishna anyway. That's how I can make sense of that seeming dichotomy. And so something that Prabhupada says is a man being in distress doesn't in itself mean that the man is impious, because a pious man could be in distress because the material world is meant to be in distress. So really everyone everyone will be in distress, pious and impious, both. And so just like I said, Prabhupada says, the winter doesn't selectively choose. If you're pious, you'll be cold and suffer, and if you're impious, you'll suffer. If you're pious, you won't suffer. The winter affects everyone equally. And so the same thing, the material nature affects everyone equally. We're all tormented by the material nature, and it's how we respond to that determines whether we're pious or not. So the same example, if we turn to Krishna for relief from the distress, then we're pious. Whereas if we don't turn to Krishna, then we're impious. And then if we turn to Krishna, not for relief, but for service, then we're transcendental. And so if looking at those three categories, I find relief that no matter in what way I'm approaching Krishna, I'm somewhere in the middle. If I have all my material desires, I'm still approaching Krishna. And so that's the example that I mentioned earlier of the man who's in distress and goes to church and approaches God. God, please, I'm distressed. Give me some relief. And I like how Prabhupada says that he's a good man. He's a good man. He's certainly more of a good man than the man that doesn't go to church. And so in that same verse, the final verse of the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada shares that in the 8th chapter, it was said that only one who has become free from all sinful reactions can take to the worship of Lord Krishna. So that's like that dichotomy that I mentioned just moments ago. And so this is why I posed the question: is Bhakti Yoga only for someone that's already pure? Because Prabhupada himself writes, thus one may think that unless he is free from all sinful reactions, he cannot take to the surrendering process. And to such doubts, it is here said that even if one is not free from all sinful reactions, simply by the process of surrendering to Sri Krishna, he is automatically freed. There's no need of strenuous effort to free oneself from sinful reactions. One should unhesitantly accept Krishna as the supreme savior of all living entities, and with all faith and love, surrender unto him. So again, the verses, the purports, the lectures that I handpicked are very affirming and encouraging of this point that, again, no matter where we're at, no matter what our desires, going to Krishna is the best option. Is the most sublime, the most transcendental, the best chance that we'll get what we're after. It might not necessarily look like what we're after. Like there's the example of see what is his name? I don't recall. No, not Jamila. It was like the young boy that wanted to sit on his dad's lap.
Dhruva Maharaj.
What is it? Dhruva Maharaj, who he wanted to sit on the lap of his dad, and his stepmom said, no, you can't do that. And so he became so committed to getting what he wanted, which was purely material. He wanted a great kingdom to like show it off to her, or to maybe finally get to sit on his dad's lap. And so he pursued Vishnu incessantly, and finally he approached Vishnu, and I'm paraphrasing. Once he finally attained Vishnu, he said something like, "Wow, I feel so terrible. Like I was searching after a piece of glass, and I've gotten like the most wonderful jewel. I don't want anything from you, Krishna. I don't want anything from you. Just like having reached you is sufficient." And so we might get what we want, which ultimately behind our material desires is happiness in some form. And so we might get what we ultimately want. Krishna might not necessarily give us what are like means to that end, which is like, oh, I want kingdom or money or women or whatever it is. We might not get those things, but still it's the most intelligent to approach Krishna for it, because we're really, in a way, if we commit to the process like Dhruva did, then we're guaranteed to get to the result of happiness. We might not get the material things that we want, but we are still guaranteed the happiness. And so Prabhupada mentions actually many impure devotees that attained a pure state, many known devotees, like in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 2494, he references how Krishna says that people approach him in distress, like the four categories that we mentioned. Some people approach him in knowledge, like that. And so, for example, like the devotee Gajendra approached him when he was in distress, and others like the sage Shaunaka, who was inquisitive, or others who needed money, like Dhruva Maharaj, who we mentioned. And even Shukadev Goswami approached the Lord when he was pursuing knowledge. So all these great personalities began to approach Krishna in some less than pure way, and they became well-renowned, pure devotees, pure personalities that we learn from and we study and we model in some way. And so for me, that's really encouraging, that no matter where we're at, really, I don't even know if there's a way to begin other than impure. I'm not claiming that there isn't, but in everything that I found, Prabhupada, Krishna speak about, start impure, just like the remedy for offensive chanting is more chanting. I've heard that from J.R. Govinda. I haven't heard something like the remedy for impure service is more service, but that's kind of the premise that I get from everything here, is serve with wherever you're at, with whatever you got, and through that process, that'll itself become purified, which I think is very, again, very affirmative, very affirming. So like I was saying, in every text, the same point, at least somewhere, there's probably other things that say something different, or something seemingly different, but in all the texts, I drew from each of the texts to get to this point. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, Text 10, the translation is, a person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of all material desire, without any material desire, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the personality of Godhead. And then a part of the purport says that one with a broader outlook, even with a desire for material enjoyment or for liberation, should take to the worship of the Lord directly. So I really love that point, that it's so inclusive, or like the title that I gave the class is Krishna consciousness is for everyone. You want material enjoyment? Yeah, ask Krishna for it. You want liberation from material suffering? Ask Krishna for it. You want simply to serve Krishna? Go to Krishna for that too. I really love that point, because it really helps me to sink in. Like we sometimes talk about how Krishna consciousness is non-sectarian. It's not for this kind of person, that kind of person. And I like that it doesn't even discriminate between levels of purity. Like the distinctions are there, but it doesn't discriminate, like, oh, if you're not pure enough, you can't come in. You can't come into Krishna Loka, those things. But as far as like coming into the movement, coming into the practice of Krishna consciousness, I love that there's no discrimination. There's no material impediments for devotional service. There's no material impediments for bhakti yoga. So that's I think that's wonderful. It's really accessible to everyone, regardless of where they're at. Like I'm remembering a story about a saint, or maybe a brahmana, a brahmachari, a sannyasi. I don't remember exactly what his role was, but he was some kind of saintly person, and he would be reading scripture, and then somewhere nearby he could see a prostitute who was doing what prostitutes do, and every day the saintly person was kind of like ruminating about like how terrible this prostitute was, and like so filthy. And the prostitute, while she was waiting outside for her clients, was listening to the scripture, wishing like, oh, I wish I could one day be like him. And so they happened that they died at the same time. They left their body at the same time, and the servants of, what is the Yamaraj? The servants of Yamaraj came, and they were taking him away, while the servants of Vishnu that take someone in the other direction came for her. And the saintly person said, oh, there must be some kind of mistake here. I'm the one that's been reading this. She's a prostitute. And one of the two parties, I don't recall which one, explained, well, no, actually what happens is like you were constantly focusing on like how terrible this person was in prostitution and like, damning her, while she was only aspiring to be pure, to be saintly. So actually, yeah, you each attained the result of your thinking. I'm not paraphrasing, and they didn't exactly say that. So that like, yeah, so much drives the point for me that there is no impediment for progression on the spiritual path, which to me is greatly affirming, because I come up with all kinds of like, oh, well, I can't succeed, or I'm not pure enough to do it, or what have you. And so there's so many examples in the scriptures and in Prabhupada's lectures that really blow those points out of the water. So hopefully and maybe if any of you is helpful for you, hopefully we can remember those things. And I really like how Prabhupada puts it in the 5th canto. He actually says that the initiation into bhakti begins when one is in a distressed condition, or in want of money, or when one is inquisitive or wants to understand the absolute. That like initiation into bhakti begins, and that's what really draws me to the conclusion that we all, or maybe not all, but the vast majority of us will start somewhere less than fully pure, and that's the initiation. And then that's the process. It's a process of refinement. It's a process of purification. It's not, okay, once you're pure, then start. It reminds me of something that maybe sometimes we talk about in personal growth, like how perfection is a strategy for avoidance. It's like a strategy for procrastination. If I say, okay, I'll take the Krishna consciousness once I'm pure, then like I'll probably never do it, because I probably can't be pure without it to begin with. And so, yeah, it's really the process of surrendering. This is where I'm at right now. Surrendering. I don't know it all. I'm not pure. This is where I'm at. I have these impurities, and then surrendering to Krishna. So surrendering both to where I'm at and surrendering to Krishna as an inclusion of where I'm at in my distress, in my desire for whatever material gain, even for liberation from the distress. It's accepting that and accepting Krishna. And so Prabhupada writes that one really shouldn't come to Krishna for material desires, but Krishna is so loving, so merciful that even if someone unnecessarily disturbs him for material gain, he's kind and fulfills the desires of these beggars. And so Prabhupada says that that there's no need to approach Krishna for material gain, material desires, because Krishna is already taking care of everyone. Like, and he references the Christian prayer, God, please give us our daily bread. He says, really, there's no need for that. You're already getting your daily bread. Krishna is already providing for everyone, meeting them in their deserving and in their desire. So there's really no need for that. But okay, even if someone disturbs Krishna, he's going to fulfill their desires anyway, which I think is very merciful of Krishna. Yes, and so we can also connect with the point that it's especially when we're in a state of distress that we tend to remember Krishna. We tend to turn to God, especially when we're in distress, whether that's in a distress because I have something that I'm longing for that I don't have, or the threefold miseries, whatever the case might be. Just like we referenced earlier, in the material context, pretty much everyone is going to be distressed, which in the lens of turning to God is good, is like supportive. That's why Queen Kunti prayed something like, I would rather have distress in my life so that I can remember you rather than lead a happy life, because then I might forget you. And that's a point that Prabhupada emphasizes, that we tend to, mostly everyone, not mostly everyone, but more so than in happiness, more people tend to remember God when in distress, and only the pious will remember Krishna when in happiness. So to be safe, it's good to be in distress, so that we're more likely to turn to Krishna. We're more likely to remember Krishna, please relieve this distress. And then, yeah, maybe we don't actually even want to be relieved from the distress, because then we still want to continue remembering Krishna. It's safer to be in distress, at least in terms of spiritual growth, than it is to be comfortable, because we're more likely to remember Krishna. For a devotee, being in distress is an opportunity to deepen one's love, one's connection with Krishna. Whereas for maybe someone that's more materially inclined, distress is like a reason that God is not good. Like sometimes people say, like, oh, well, if God is good, then why is there suffering? Why is there a virus? Why is there people starving? And well, one answer to that question is so that those people can remember God more, rather than to prove that God is not there. A devotee will turn any opportunity, any experience into an opportunity to deepen their connection with Krishna. And that's especially so in distress. I know I can personally relate, whether it's like in small moments, like some months ago, I was rock wall climbing, and I was connected to a harness and everything. So like I was protected, and still like I thought I was going to fall. And then like, I just like instantly went to chanting Hare Krishna. Like I thought I was going to fall. So, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. And so like, I can see how even in like seemingly very small, circumstances, there's so much truth, so much power in distress leads to remembering Krishna. And of course, like in greater distresses, maybe if I'm like worried about my finances, or maybe like for some people, like the pandemic, those also serve as opportunities for connecting with Krishna. And I can see it's like both in the macrocosmic and in the microcosmic ways. At least I can see that this is true in my life. When I'm in distress, I tend to turn to Krishna more. And Prabhupada somewhat references a couple, like they had lost like 7 or 8 daughters. And so they were very much in distress, and they were praying to Krishna. And then they got a son. And Prabhupada references pious people, devotees, they'll remember Krishna even in their wellness, even in their happiness. And so he referenced this couple that once they got the son, they used that as an opportunity to remember Krishna more. Rebecca likes rock wall climbing too. Yes, that's good. Yes, the couple that use their being blessed, use the mercy of Krishna to remember Krishna more. That's also an important point, because then, like, in a way, we're not dependent on being in distress to remember Krishna, which I like that point. I would ultimately like to not need distress to remember Krishna, and then I could have both like happiness or like peace and remembering Krishna. That to me sounds like the ideal. And so Prabhupada references that point. It's possible. It's maybe harder for someone that's not a pure devotee, and it's possible. So for me, it's something to aspire for, which helps me to connect with what you shared, dear Govinda Prabhu, I think yesterday in class, how gratitude is the strongest correlation with happiness. And for me, like, really, when I think about being grateful, really that always goes to God, that always goes to Krishna. Like, who am I grateful to for whatever thing? Even if, like, okay, I might also be grateful for like the instrument. I might be grateful to the instrument of my karma. Like if Malini or Narayan do something nice or something loving for me, like I'm grateful to them. And also ultimately, like, my aspiration at least is to go back to Krishna and say, God, Krishna, thank you for putting these wonderful people in my life that are loving towards me. So I like that point that you mentioned yesterday, dear Govinda, and I see that connected to these points here, remembering Krishna in distress, and also aspiring to remember Krishna when not in distress. Yes. So really, the way that Prabhupada puts it is that one can only remember Krishna, especially in times of distress, if one is pious, if one has executed pious activities in the past. Prabhupada says one simply cannot remember Krishna if he has not been pious, and so he again draws the conclusion that a pious man is more likely to remember Krishna, even if he has opulence. He'll use that as an opportunity to become even more attached, which I like that aspiration for me personally, to aspire to be. I don't see within me the aspiration to be a pure devotee. That seems like really far, but to aspire to use everything to remember Krishna, that seems attainable to me. Like I've experienced that in distress. I've experienced that in gratitude and joy. And so for me, I like that's the stage where, in my stage of impurity, my purification goes to remembering Krishna always, in happiness and distress, when I get something I like, when I get something I don't like, always thinking, oh yes, thank you for this, Krishna. Like this is somehow a gift. Whether it's a gift to pray to you for my distress, or a gift to be grateful to you in my joy. And you mentioned, Amalini, the story of Ajamila, and so that I found that in a book called A Second Chance by Prabhupada, and so I have an excerpt from there too, where Prabhupada says, Krishna is the best friend of every living entity. He is equal to everyone. He is not only the friend of the residents of Vrindavan, the gopis, his parents, the cowherd men and boys, the cows, but he is everyone's friend because everyone is part and parcel of him. So Krishna loves everyone unlimitedly, and Krishna's devotees inherit the super excellent loving qualities of Krishna. Therefore, they are truly the friends of everyone. I really like that that excerpt. That's really touching to me, that Krishna loves everyone unlimitedly, because sometimes the way that I can, well, really most of the time, maybe up until doing this class, the way that I would interpret the Shastra is, well, Krishna really only loves his pure devotees. He kind of like maybe tolerates the other people. He kind of maybe like tolerates me. He's like, okay, I'll kind of keep you around. Maybe you'll like become more pure or something. And so, yeah, for me personally, this verse is really touching, that Krishna loves everyone. Krishna, he is equal to everyone. And I'm remembering something that, again, that I've heard you share, dear Govinda, something like for a mother, no matter what the child does, the mother will love the child. And yeah, there are things that the child could do that the mother might be more pleased with, might be more happy with. And regardless, her love for the child is transcendental. Like it's very hard, maybe even impossible for a mother not to love her child. So if that exists for a mother, then what about for the supreme parent? What about for Krishna? Like it makes sense to me then that auspicious quality of loving one's child, even if that child is whatever, corrupt or impure, or whatever, doing things that I don't like, but still loving that child. If that auspicious quality is present in someone in the material world, then it only makes sense that quality is present in its pure form for the supreme parent, for the supreme personality of Godhead, for the supreme spiritual super soul. And so, yeah, that I find a lot of comfort, a lot of shelter in this verse. Krishna is equal to everyone. Krishna loves everyone unlimitedly. He's everyone's friend. And that for me relates to what we're talking about here, because he's even the friend of the impious. And since I'm focusing on the four kinds of pious, impure devotees, he's the friends of these kinds of devotees as well. He's not just the friends of the devotees that are doing things that are doing everything that he loves. He's the friends, and he loves the devotees that do things that aren't the most pleasing to him, just like the mother, does. I'm recalling something that you shared again, David, how the mother doesn't hate the child if she gets like his stool on them, I think maybe you reference it's like sandalwood pulp to her or something like this. Yeah, so the same way, if the child does something that is like disturbing, that is disgusting, that is like really, really distasteful to the parent doesn't see it as an impediment to love them. And so I really like to meditate on that quality of Krishna, that no matter what things I do that I know aren't the most pleasing, that are displeasing to Krishna, Krishna still loves me. That really gives me like the comfort, the reassurance to continue anyway, rather than to give up. Or like, well, if Krishna doesn't love me anyway, then like, why even try? Instead of like, for me at least, it helps me to stay motivated, to stay encouraged, to keep trying, because at least intellectually I can get that Krishna loves me anyway, which is yeah, very, very supportive. Yes. So that is that's what I have for class today. I open it up to comments and or questions. Kathleen, I see your box lighting up, but I'm not hearing you yet.
I want to say that I was just really inspired by your commentary. I came on late, but was moved by like your personal connection and your personal story, and I really resonated with it, and I just experienced you as very connected to it, and it moved me.
Thanks. Thanks for sharing. You were positively moved. You trying to turn up the volume? Yes. Thank you for sharing. That's sweet to hear.
Hi, Eze, Hare Krishna. Thank you for the class. I just wanted to like affirm that it's very comforting where you went with the verse and the simplicity of it, and it just feels like a blanket of comfort to me, what you said and what you shared. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I don't have any questions. I just wanted to let you know that.
Jai, yeah, I'm so happy that you were so comforted by what I shared today.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, a blanket of comfort. I like that.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Simran Shakti.
Hi, yeah, I want to say thank you for everything that you shared in your commentary. I also feel very moved, inspired, and supported by that class. I appreciated all of the excerpts and like the vast experiential notes that you shared. And for me right now, it's feeling inspiring to keep going, even when a lot of times, like intellectually, I feel like I'm not understanding or I'm not remembering so much that I can like reflect and recite with people, you know, or maybe I'm not feeling like I got what I read down so much that it's like in there. It's inspiring that just reading it is enough, and to keep going and like trust the process, and yeah, just like keep leaning into Krishna.
I'm getting that, like this was comforting, this was supportive, like you feel inspired and encouraged to continue, even if you're not like at the level where you're remembering everything that you're reading, like you're inspired to keep going anyway. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. And I also say, like, I have my computer here where I have my notes, just like I wasn't remembering the things that I was reading, I was compiling them so that I could reference them. So I share that because, yeah, like I you know, before I gave my first class, I had the similar process, like, well, I don't know things, so how could I possibly give class? And then I was asked to give class, so I said, okay, I'll just meet myself where I'm at, which is doing the research and compiling it in a way. That's why I keep looking to the bottom left to look at my computer. Yeah, and so I'm sharing that because maybe that'll give you some more encouragement that you don't need to remember things in order to share or add value.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I'd like to add something to what you just said, that because a lot of your class was sharing how we approach God in distress, or like for business exchange, and taking shelter of a pure devotee is what can lead us to become a pure devotee. And when we read Srila Prabhupada's books, we associate with Srila Prabhupada.
Yes.
So we don't need to make it about remembering or learning even. It's remembering that that's a process. Reading the books, hearing from Srila Prabhupada is a process to become pure, because we get in direct contact with the pure devotee.
Yeah, that's so reassuring. Just by reading, like we're achieving success. If we don't remember, we don't understand, like I don't get it, I don't like it, I don't resonate with it, we're still associating with a pure devotee, and it's like a tuning fork vibrating at a much higher frequency that's like helping us purify. Hare Krishna. Thanks for sharing that, Malini. Yes. Any other questions or comments or sharings?
I appreciated your class. I'm glad you're giving class.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Haribol.
Haribol, Ramachandra.
Hare Krishna. I really appreciated how you clarified what is actually purity, and I really like this quote you brought up from the self-growth. How do you call it? Self-development.
Yeah, personal growth. Yeah.
Could you repeat it, please? It was really
So when I said something like perfection is like an excuse for procrastination, something like this. And I said that. Yeah.
So yeah, like how much of real actually purity, which is in every one of us, being a spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna, is already there, and we don't need to do anything. It's already there, and we just connect with sincerity. And I remember, like, we read maybe a month ago, a few weeks ago, this quote from the Nectar of Devotion, which really stands up for me like gold every time I remember the Nectar of Devotion, that the only qualification to serve, to love Krishna is sincerity. And take so many external forms which don't really matter. They don't matter so far we're sincere in that. So thank you
yeah, I appreciate your comment, Ramachandra Prabhu, because it really points to like the example with the prostitute. Like, okay, by many standards she was considered lower, impure, etc., and yet she had sincerity, and that got her, I don't know if it got her all the way, but it got her definitely very far, her sincerity. So I really appreciate you sharing that comment. I see how it really relates to what we're sharing here. Like, it's just like you said, everyone already has this connection with Krishna. And so it's very natural when, like, in distress, to go there. Like, even, we can hear stories about like atheists, like, no, nothing. And then they're put in like a very scary, dire situation. And then somehow or other, they're like, I'm praying. I don't even know who I'm praying to. I've never prayed, but like they find it to go there. And so, like, yeah, in a way, I see that the stress can really shake us from our, maybe like our puffed upness, and move us to humility and sincerity. So I appreciate that.
I would say even the distress like clarifies to us what is important to us in approaching Krishna, what is important to us in this loving exchange and bhakti. In a sense, for me, I don't know. Yeah.
Could you maybe like put that into more words? What you mean? I didn't quite.
When I go through all the stress and the de-stress, and it just shows me what is really important, what really is sincere, and what really makes me sincere for long term, not just for short term. Oh, Krishna, I need some, money or sense gratification. But
the stress mind of what's really important.
Yeah, what is the really distressful condition? Hare Krishna.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a comment about the gratitude part.
Mm.
Because the distress is helping us to go to Krishna. And you said in your class that Srila Prabhupada expressed how the next level is to see Krishna when we are in happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And then you connected that with yesterday's class and gratitude. And gratitude seems to be that bridge.
Mm-hmm.
That bridge where we can really start to remember the Lord in what we receive.
Mm-hmm.
And then gratitude also like allow the distress to transform into opportunities and to transform into beauty and so I appreciate that you made that point, because the attitude of gratitude is something that's reachable.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like really far away, like okay, let me remember Krishna when I'm happy. Or what's the process of that?
Yeah.
And then, okay, gratitude. Okay, that's a bridge. It's something concrete.
It's very tangible. Yeah.
So I appreciated that.
Yeah. I like you sharing, you putting that in terms of like practical terms. How, I could be happy and I could say, oh, well, I'm lucky. I could accredit it to like luck, or say, oh, my hard work paid off. I could enjoy my happiness in a way that's not connected with Krishna. And so gratitude would be that bridge. Like if I always say like, thank you, Krishna, because you gave me everything, no matter what I had, like I am the taste of water, like, wow, the water, like I'm the smell of the earth, like, wow, this smells so nice. Whatever we have that we appreciate, if we always say like, Krishna, you gave it to me, you're the original source, then that's like a very practical tool that we can use to connect always back to Krishna in moments of happiness. Yeah. I really appreciate that comment. Yeah.
I was reflecting on what you said.
Well, I appreciate you highlighting that part. Yes. Kathleen, you like the tuning fork metaphor. Yes. Okay, I'll ask one final time before closing class. Any final comments or questions?
I just want to say, Hare Krishna, that I appreciated the story that really touched me, that the prostitute was like thinking like, oh, I wish I was like more pious, or I don't know what she was praying for, but that touched me. And then I really like the beginning of your class, like the capital no.
You liked my emphatic no. Krishna consciousness is not just for pure devotees.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah.
It's something we can be grateful for.
Yeah, something that we can be grateful for. Wow, thanks for giving me a chance, even though I'm not like top 1%. Yes.
I'd like to comment.
Hey, Rebecca.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for your class, Eze. I'm just thinking about in times of distress for me, where at first I was thinking, well, there are times I'm in distress that I don't go to Krishna in a way that's, I don't turn to Krishna necessarily. I maybe even turn away from Krishna because, or at least it seems that way, because it might bring up anger, or because I'm maybe feeling like a victim or in my situation, and I may turn away, whereas I see that like in times of joy and when I can really connect with like feeling heard, and by from Prabhupada, from Krishna, like Krishna's heard me, Prabhupada's heard me, and that moves me to feel like I surrender more to Prabhupada and Krishna. But then I was just thinking more about what I first said about times in distress, when I'm not feeling that I'm maybe moving further away from Krishna. Actually, even just that, what I was just saying feels like purifying, like because it's bringing up bringing up the pain,
Yeah.
the anger that I have, that's inside of me, that needs to be purified, and it's the perfect situation for that purification.
Mm. Yeah, so like you see sometimes when you're in distress, maybe like you make it like, oh, you blame Krishna, like you become angry with Krishna, and so you move further away. Though I'm hearing you say that right now, by taking a look at that, by taking a closer look at your anger and seeing that there's pain underneath that anger, actually it's moving you closer to Krishna.
Yes, right. I'm seeing that now, that it's actually the opposite of what I was originally thinking, that it's actually that even in my anger or my, blame or whatever is coming up for me towards Krishna, in those moments of distress, if that happens, if I'm feeling, when that happens, then it is actually it actually is an opportunity for me to get closer to Krishna, to purify, to clear that which is holding me back from being in a more deeper relationship with Krishna.
Yes, I get, like you're saying that you can use distress as an opportunity to move you closer to Krishna, whether that's like praying to Krishna for relief, or whether like if the distress is that you notice you have anger towards Krishna, then like what can move you closer to Krishna is to clear that in one way or another, like maybe look at where you're blaming, or in whatever way shifting what's happening inside so that you can move closer. And like kind of like Malini highlighted, that any opportunity, whether happiness or distress, can be an opportunity to move closer to Krishna. And you're seeing that personally in your process.
Yes, and even with gratitude, just seeing that gratitude is also, I experience that, like just this opportunity for surrender and for feeling supported and heard, and so
Yes, like you mentioned, when you associate with Prabhupada through his books, and you feel heard or seen by Prabhupada and Krishna, that moves you to gratitude.
Oh yes, sometimes even in a deeper way than if I'm in distress. Like I've had moments where I've been reading and I've felt directly communicated with, and I have felt like just I don't know how to describe it. It's just, I feel so moved, so deeply moved by the communication, that I've had moments of just feeling so humbled and surrendered, and so like held, like so like it's just such a tender, like where I've been in tears and just I've had that. I've experienced that.
That's very encouraging to hear. Like to hear you've been so moved to gratitude towards love for Krishna, and having like the sense of a very personal connection through reading some scripture. That's beautiful to hear.
Yes. Thank you, Eze.
Thanks for sharing that. Malini, were you about to say something?
Why I had 2 points I wanted to share in regard to Rebecca, but you want me to make sense?
Sure.
Well, one point was also previous about, I think connected with that, is that what's the amazing part of Bhakti Yoga is that the process is the goal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very rare. Usually you have a process, and the process leads you to a goal, and there is a difference between the two. But in Bhakti Yoga, the process is the goal itself. So as we practice, we are already there.
Yeah.
And in regard to Rebecca, what was coming to me is that being angry with Krishna is still a relationship with Krishna,
Mm-hmm.
is still
Yeah.
being like in a relationship with a person, which is quite a really high level
Yeah.
of spiritual realization. Most of the world doesn't have the realization that Krishna is a person, so it's
Right.
difficult to be angry with
Yeah.
someone who is not a person.
Yeah.
So that anger is like a proof of a relationship, and it's a
Mhm.
proof that Krishna is a person.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, in Sabato, we talk so much about turning conflict into closeness. It can very much be an opportunity. And I hear like in a way that's what you went through just now, Rebecca, where, yeah, I have some conflict. I'm angry at you, and let me address it. And then like, actually we can create more closeness. And like, it reminds me of, can I share something that you've said like about Ravana and Kamsa? Where like Malini shared, in a way you're envious of Kamsa and Ravana because they were always thinking of Krishna. Okay, it wasn't in like a positive way, but they were always thinking of Krishna. Wasn't favorable, but okay, it's still thinking of Krishna, and like that's so highly sought after. And so okay, if I'm so angry that I'm thinking about Krishna, okay, it's not the best stage, but I'm always thinking of Krishna, so I can use it as a platform to now just change my thinking about Krishna, but keep the part where I'm thinking about Krishna. Yes. Ladini?
Hare Krishna. I want to share, Rebecca, that I really appreciate where you went with it. Like, it's like an opportunity to see like where we are at. And the connection I'm making, like if we come to Krishna from distress, that's not a pure motivation. And then the risk there is the distress disappears. And so there is no reason to stay with Krishna. And you said it as then we also need to learn to stay with Krishna in happiness. And then the next possibility is that the distress doesn't disappear. And then we become angry with Krishna. So anyway, so I was thinking like we were speaking about the expectations the other day. And it's exactly like if I'm like coming from the impure motives, then I have the expectations. And it might be fulfilled or not fulfilled. And it can be both a distraction from the devotional path. And so I'm appreciating Rebecca's point, because it's like, okay, so I come because I'm in distress. And then the distress doesn't disappear, so I'm angry. But it can be like a platform of like, wow, like my motives aren't pure, like a self-realization. Because maybe I come because of distress, but I'm like thinking myself like, no, of course, I'm like a pure devotee. But then the distress remains and I'm angry. So that's a revelation of where I'm really at.
Yes, like I'm hearing you say that your response, your relationship with what you get when you come to Krishna for the stress, whether it's the stress disappearing and you take a look at like, oh, and then I forgot Krishna, or if it doesn't disappear and then you go into anger, it's an opportunity for your self-realization about what's happening between you and Krishna. What are your expectations, like that?
Well, I'm not owning it, but Rebecca shared it and I experienced rest, like having it. And so I appreciated it.
Okay, like you don't so much see that quality in you, but you appreciated it in Rebecca.
Yes.
I see. Yeah, for me, something that you highlighted, Ladini, is, yeah, there's two possibilities: that the stress goes away and there's a risk that I'll forget about Krishna when the distress goes away. And okay, if the distress doesn't go away, there's a risk that I'll go into anger. And like we were just talking about with Malini, okay, even if I'm angry with Krishna, I'm still remembering Krishna. So that's like I see it as a microcosm of how come like Queen Kunti, not that she was necessarily going into anger, but why she was saying that it's more favorable to be in distress, even if it's after I prayed and it didn't go away, because at least if I'm angry with Krishna, I'm still thinking about Krishna, and that's further along than forgetting about Krishna altogether.
Yeah, that's why it says that if Krishna likes you, he gives you everything, and if he loves you, he takes away everything.
Okay, I see. I hadn't heard that before.
So it's most important to make sure that Krishna only likes us.
Yes. That's one approach. Okay. So as promised, I was only going to ask one more time, so I won't ask again. Is there any other questions? Bhagavad Gita ki jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
What are you having for breakfast?
Oatmeal.
Oh, I miss Melanie.'s oatmeal. Raisins in the oatmeal? Soaked raisins. Oh, salivating.